Good evening. Prince Harry has lifted the lid on a complete breakdown of his relationship with his father and expressed regret that his children will not be able to visit what he called his homeland. Earlier, the Duke lost a Court of Appeal challenge over the UK government's decision to strip him of publicly funded security when he's in the UK. Well, that prompted an extraordinary interview with the BBC, half an hour long and intensely personal in nature, that gave an insight into a royal family in crisis and beset with uncertainty as the King continues his treatment for cancer, with the Duke saying he doesn't know how much longer his father has. Here's our royal correspondent, Rhiannon Mills, and a warning: her report contains flash photography.
His appearance back in the UK in April for the two-day hearing was a surprise. But that's how much this has meant to Prince Harry. And yet now his battle for more security has failed. His fears about what it means for him and his family so strong. This was his reaction.
I can't see a world in which I would be bringing my wife and children back to the UK at this point. And the things that they're going to miss is, well, everything. You know, I love my country. I always have done, despite what some people in that country have done.
This has been rumbling on ever since they stepped away in 2020. Harry's legal team arguing the decision to stop their automatic police protection was a threat to their safety. They didn't want to be treated differently, just fairly. The Home Office, however, argued it was right that the Royal VIP and Executive Committee, or RAVEC, now review their security on a case-by-case basis, like this visit for the 10th anniversary of the Invictus Games. The Court of Appeal judges agreed.
The decisions were taken, I said in my judgment, as an understandable and perhaps predictable reaction to the Duke of Sussex having stepped back from royal duties and having left the UK to live principally overseas. So the conclusion, in my judgment, was that the Duke of Sussex's appeal would be dismissed.
Just some of Harry's concerns were laid out in a written statement. In recent years, he wrote, "My family and I have been subjected to well-documented neo-Nazi and extremist threats, including from Al-Qaeda. There are individuals in prison on UK soil because of such threats. And yet, since 2019, a proper risk assessment has not been conducted. This is not only a deviation from standard practice, it's a dereliction of duty." An establishment stitch-up, as he described it in his interview, strongly suggesting the King could have done more but didn't want to help them.
There have been so many disagreements, differences between me and some of my family. This current situation that has been ongoing for 5 years with regard to human life and safety is the sticking point. It is the only thing that's left. Of course, some members of my family will never forgive me for writing a book. Of course, they will never forgive me for lots of things. But, you know, there is... I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. As I said, life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff. But it would be nice to reconcile.
Palace sources have previously said it would be inappropriate for the King to intervene. In a statement, a palace spokesperson said, "All of these issues have been examined repeatedly and meticulously by the courts, with the same conclusion reached on each occasion." Firmly sticking to procedure, as Harry appeared to offer some sort of personal olive branch.
As I learned through the First Nations throughout Canada, because of the Invictus Games, their goal in life was always truth and reconciliation. And I turned around to them in many conversations and I said, right, but reconciliation can't come without truth. Well, I've now found out the truth. I've shared some of it with you today. A lot of it exists out there, whether people choose to ignore it or not. You know, So it would be nice to have that reconciliation part now. If they don't want that, that's entirely up to them.
Prince Harry has consistently made clear that this was always about his safety, but most importantly, his family. It was a point of principle. And now released from the constraints of being part of the royal institution, he feels empowered in a way to speak up for whatever he believes really matters. And that includes talking publicly about his family and his father. Security still apparently the biggest barrier to rebuilding those relationships. Rhiannon Mills, Sky News.
Well, from Princess Diana's Panorama interview to Prince Andrew on Newsnight, bombshell interviews have defined public perception of the royal family over the past 30 years. And today's intervention from Prince Harry threatens to echo those seminal moments and perhaps mark the end of a chapter for a family and institution engaged in almost constant internal strife in recent history. Here's our royal correspondent, Laura Bundock.
For many years, they only had each other. But more recently, the rift between them wider than ever, sparked by Harry's anger at the treatment of Meghan by both family and firm.
I realized they're never going to protect you.
In the years following their move to California, Harry and Meghan have spoken their truth over and over.
I was terrified. I didn't want history to repeat itself.
Grenades thrown across the Atlantic, landing at Buckingham Palace. From interviews claiming racism in the family to his explosive memoir, alleging his brother once attacked him and that they'd begged their father not to marry Camilla. Now, 5 years after he left, the Duke wants to come back, asking his family in the most public way possible for reconciliation.
I don't think it will go down particularly well at the palace or probably within the family. Trust is the issue that has driven this rift between Harry and his family, because they do not feel that they can trust him to keep private conversations private. And now he's gone so public with his raw emotions over this.
The once Fab Four have only been reunited once since 2020, after the late Queen died. Since then, both the King and Princess of Wales have been diagnosed with cancer.
The cancer journey is complex, scary and unpredictable for everyone.
The slimmed-down family stretched even further, with many saying there is a Prince Harry-shaped hole that is hard to fill.
I doubt if this will be a straight line to Harry playing the incomparable role that he could play. I don't suppose it's going to be a straight line there, but I think the direction from this point on, from this speech, it's a very significant moment in history. There will not be a significant turn back again.
Yes, I'm not just doing it for them.
But differences and disagreements still divide the House of Windsor. This latest move by Harry, an astonishing salvo in a sorry situation. He's signalled his hope for the future, but can his family forgive and forget all that's passed between them? Laura Bundock, Sky News.
Let's speak to our royal correspondent Rhiannon Mills now. And Rhiannon, this felt potentially like a moment of closure for Harry, but what does the next chapter look like for him?
So I think legally this does look like the end when it comes to him battling to try and get better security back here in the UK. But it also feels like a complete sledgehammer when it comes to his relationships with his family. When you listen to his tone, he's incredibly angry still. He feels that this has been a huge attack on him, Meghan and their children. I think for me what is astonishing is this was meant to be an interview responding to that Court of Appeal ruling, and we got so much more. And that is because this is now a man who feels like he's been completely released into the open, that he doesn't face the constraints of being within the royal family. I think what is difficult for the palace tonight is that hint at an establishment stitch-up. Him again hinting at the men in grey suits not supporting them. Of course, we heard that in the Oprah interview. We heard that in the past also from Princess Diana. And I think for anyone who supported the Sussexes, they'll see this again as the palace being outdated and even unable to support their own. What I find particularly illuminating from trying to find out from the palace and Kensington Palace, Buckingham Palace, about what's going on in terms of relationships with Harry and Meghan and the rest of the Windsors, we hear very clearly from Harry that he is not communicating with his father. And despite the fact that we're now 5 years away since they moved away from royal life, they could not seem any further apart. What is interesting is this is a man who has always worn his heart on his sleeve. I remember interviewing him back in 2015. He said to me before that interview, "You can ask me whatever you like. I may not answer it, but you can ask." And now we are seeing if you ask him a question, he will give you the most honest of answers if he thinks it's for the moral good.
OK, Rhiannon, thank you. On to tonight's other big story, and that is that Reform UK has made a decisive breakthrough in elections across England as Labour and the Conservatives lost ground to smaller parties. Well, in the local elections, all the votes have been counted, and this is where things stand. Reform are the clear winners of the day. They gained 677 seats and won control of 10 councils across England. It's also been a good day for the Liberal Democrats, who've won 3 councils and are up 163 seats. On the other end of the spectrum, this is one of the worst performances the Conservatives have had in local elections in modern history. They are down 677 seats and have lost control of 18 councils. It was also a bad day for Labour. They failed to defend their 1 council and lost 189 seats. Well, let's look in more detail at what Reform achieved. Well, it gained 10 councils today, 8 from the Conservatives, 1 from Labour and 1 from no overall control. Doncaster, Kent, Lancashire and Derbyshire amongst the councils which the party won today. The other big gain, which will resonate most deeply in Westminster, was Reform's victory in the Runcorn and Helsby by-election, with Sarah Poshin winning the seat from Labour with a majority of just 6. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, reports now on a night that could signal a lasting shift in the country's political landscape. And a warning, there is flash photography.
Just 6 votes in it. Nigel Farage's Reform winning the Runcorn by-election on the slightest of margins in a victory of massive significance. Reform on the march, not just here, but right across the country. Its popularity surge in the polls now translating into real power. We've just left Runcorn, where Reform have won that by-election by 6 votes. And I've just made a few phone calls and got a tip-off that the next place I should be heading to is Durham, big Labour territory. Reform think they've done very well in the council elections there, so we've got to get up there. Farage on a victory tour taking him across the Red Wall, greeting jubilant supporters in Durham, where Labour had dominated local politics for a century until now. But back in Westminster, when you were saying I will be the next Prime Minister, a lot of people thought that was ludicrous. And you were being audacious and it wasn't believable. What do you say to them now?
They're not laughing now, are they? They've seen this is Reform Quake. That's what's going on across the country today. These are the most astonishing set of local election results in the history of our country.
What's your message to Kemi Badenoch and what's your message to Keir Starmer?
The message to Keir Starmer, sarcastically, is please keep doing what you're doing. And the message to Kemi Badenoch is, well, frankly, the Conservative Party's finished today. It's gone. It's dying in the shires. It has no future. It stands for nothing. It serves no purpose. Any chance of doing a deal with them to unite the right? I don't want to do a deal with them. We're going to win the next election on our own. In Toryland too, Reform upending rivals. Former Conservative MP Dame Andrea Jenkins becoming the first ever Reform mayor.
Her win just the start, as Reform wrested councils from the Conservatives in Lincolnshire, Staffordshire, Lancashire, Derbyshire, Nottinghamshire and even Kent. The blue heartlands turning turquoise. The PM swerving the campaign trail, trying to get on with the job as Defender-in-Chief. Examining new weapons technology in Luton, now very clear-eyed about the political threat he's facing.
I get it. I do understand people want that change. We are delivering that change. I never pretended at the election last year there was some magic wand that I could pick up and change everything within a few months. That's what's happened for so many years. It'll take time.
But voters out of that as Labour put in their worst ever local election performance. The only crumb of comfort just clinging on to mayoralties in Doncaster, the west of England and North Tyneside. The Conservatives in near wipeout. Kemi Badenoch had only one place she could go, to Cambridgeshire, where former Peterborough MP Paul Bristow won that mayoral race.
We always knew that this was going to be a challenging election. I'd been saying that right from the minute that I became leader of the party late last year. And we are renewing our party. We are rebuilding, but it's going to be a long journey.
But the Lib Dems scooping up Tory territory too. Spectacular wins here in Shropshire in the west of England, celebrating council wins in Cambridgeshire and Oxfordshire too.
People are turning to the Liberal Democrats from both Labour and Conservative. The Conservative vote is in meltdown and it's coming to the Liberal Democrats. I think lifelong Conservatives now see us as a party that best represents their values.
These might be a relatively small set of elections, but my goodness, they are big in what they're telling us about the state of the country and how people are feeling. Because Nigel Farage has turned Reform from a protest party into one of local government. And when you look at the results, well, he's beaten Labour and the Conservatives hands down when it comes to vote share. One of his supporters said to me earlier, it's like he's turning a trickle into a tsunami. And if you re-ran these results into a general election, well, Nigel Farage's claim that he could become the next Prime Minister of this country doesn't look so much now like a pipe dream. These results, this man's moment. Farage has long been the disruptor in British politics, now taking on the two-party system with consequences no one can yet predict. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Durham.
Well, Beth joins me now live from Durham. And Beth, Nigel Farage is calling this a reform quake when he spoke to you. But are we now looking at a lasting change to the political landscape? I'm asking you to make a prediction, which you said you couldn't do, actually, at the end of your piece.
You're not going to get me to make a prediction because simply we are into unknown territory. Look, we said that this, while a small set of elections, could have profound consequences, and there are serious repercussions for all the political parties and indeed the political system. When you look at Reform, they have gained over 750 councillors. They've taken 8 councils, the Runcorn by-election, 2 mayoralties. Nigel Farage now has a political machine with governing power. That is a massive and profound shift for Reform, and it's put them from being a protest party into local government, into power, and really on an equal footing in some ways as some of the parties that they have been trying to take out. If you look at the Conservatives, it is a horror show. Kemi Badenoch tonight writing in the Telegraph, apologising to her party, saying it's a bloodbath. Another rival said to me it's like everyone was machine gunned down when it came to councillors. She has lost over 670 councillors. They have lost control of 18 councils. They lost control of Buckinghamshire, where I grew up, Tory heartlands that they've held since 1973. And there are some Tories tonight saying to me, this is what the extinction point looks like. There are others saying it's going to get worse next year in the Welsh and Scottish parliamentary elections. And then there's questions now about how long could Kemi Badenoch survive. awful for her, simply awful. But then you come to Labour, the worst ever performance for them. Keir Starmer won a landslide on 34% of the vote. He's come in with 19% of the vote, a 15-point drop. They've lost 2/3 of their councils. It's been an absolute disaster for them as well, and they will no doubt be worried about reform. I just recorded our electoral dysfunction podcast with Harriet Harman, the former deputy party leader, tonight, and she said MPs are rattled and there are some wobbles in the party because they're looking at this thinking we're going to lose our seats at the next general election. So there is problems and challenges for Keir Starmer too. And then the Liberal Democrats, a great day for them, picking up 3 councils and another 163 councillors as of the latest count. So that's the parties. But there's also a more profound question about the political system. Two-party duopoly from Conservative to Labour has run our politics for decades, but now we really are in the era of a multi-party system. There are massive questions about how sustainable that is. When I asked Nigel Farage on Wednesday what the biggest risk was, should he do this well, and he didn't think he'd do this well, but he's come in better than expectations, he said the biggest risk is delivery. Now that he's got the power, can the party sustain it, use it productively and keep their momentum? So there's questions about that. But I think what I can say tonight is that we are moving into a new era of politics where what is clear is how we've done politics for the past decades. The sands are now shifting. How it lands in the next general election is all up for grabs. And Nigel Farage now has a national platform with local power and a real stage with which to truly run at the Conservatives and the Labour government.
Beth, thank you. And I did manage to get a prediction out of you there. Thank you. Well, let's get more now on what we learned from this set of elections. Here's our data and economics editor, Ed Conway.
Well, it's a big political moment, but it's also a big data moment when you look at some of the numbers that we've had here. And in a sense, there's 3 narratives intertwined here. We've got that by-election result that we heard about, first of all, in Runcorn, a massive win for Reform with an enormous swing in terms of the vote. But perhaps most striking of all, have a look at this, the majority of 6. That is basically the tightest we have ever seen. I want to show you, actually. Let me show you just a bit of historical context here. Looking back at the closest by-elections in modern history, in living memory, there is really nothing to compare with it. Maybe something kind of about 100 years ago, but nonetheless, 6. These are all really tight results. This is an incredibly knife-edge result. We've never seen anything at all like it, but nonetheless, it went for Reform, so that by-election starting that particular story. And then, of course, we've had all these mayoral results as well. And again, it's Reform in Greater Lincolnshire, Reform in Hull and East Yorkshire as well. The Conservatives there hanging on in Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. And actually, in the west of England, Labour doing better than expected, the Greens not doing quite as well as expected. But still, just look at that light blue there. And if we look at this, not just the mayoral results, not just that by-election, but also the share of seats in the local elections, because here you're talking about across the shires in England. Historically, and we're going back to the 1970s here, historically, just look at how dominant the Conservatives were and then Labour as well. So Conservatives and Labour there really dominating with the vast majority of all of the seats that are won there. And now we have this result here. Just look at Reform. They're completely tearing that apart. And if I show it in one other way, what we'll do is we'll take that and that, so the results, all of these seats for Labour and for the Conservatives, look back over history and just see how much of the share they had. And indeed, for most of history, it's been utter two-party dominance all the way through to where we are now. A complete sea change. And even 2013, which was good for UKIP, they never managed to contend with that. So that is an enormous issue. And when you look at what this might imply across the country as a whole, which we can do, because Michael Thrasher has gone through the numbers, worked out what the national estimated share would be, and it is incredibly striking. Let me just give you a bit of context to this. This is the first time that not the Conservatives, not the Labour Party have been in front here. So it's the first time that that's two-party dominance of this national estimated share, going back basically in living memory, that Reform or indeed any other third party has been ahead. And just look how far ahead, 32% share versus 19% for the Labour Party, 18% for the Conservative Party, and the Lib Dems there actually up a little bit at 16%. A really striking set of results that completely changes the picture of politics in this country.
Now, the government might have expected a rough ride from the electorate after an opening period in office defined by economic uncertainty and decisions necessary, say Labour, to stabilise the nation's finances. But for the Conservatives, after their general election demolition last year, there was no revival in opposition, only renewed pain, with their votes hemorrhaging to other parties and only the dimmest sign of light at the end of the tunnel. Kemi Badenoch's party went into the local elections defending 18 councils. They have now lost them all, with 8 councils going to Reform, 9 going to no overall control and 1 to the Liberal Democrats. Shropshire, Hertfordshire, Kent, Worcestershire and Devon are some of the councils which the Tories failed to hold on to. Here's our political correspondent, Rob Powell.
From Lincolnshire to Oxfordshire and in other shires around the country, defeat for the Conservatives. Grimsby turned from the Tories to Labour last year. Now it's Reform making strides in the region.
At the moment, they seem to be singing the right songs for the country, and that appeals to people.
I think that Reform they'll be able to make a lot of difference, because the others can't. They're just selfish, lying.
I like Nigel Farage. I think he's for the UK in general. He's got some good beliefs. He wants to progress. He believes in England a bit more, doesn't he?
From this senior Tory, an acknowledgement of the bleak situation.
It is painful and it is difficult for us, but I think we have to put this into the context of where we are as a party. Where we are as a political party, we had the worst ever general election result last year for my party in our history. And so we are rebuilding. We are absolutely rebuilding.
Other MPs are privately more scathing of Kemi Badenoch, accusing her of not setting out a vision to sell the nation or building a proper campaigning machine. Home to the ruins of the town's castle, Kenilworth is Warwickshire's last remaining Conservative MP too. But the Tories have now lost control of the county council here, under siege on several fronts.
Warwickshire really shows the big problem the Conservatives have. Here and further south, they're losing support to the Lib Dems, while in the north of the county, it's Reform that's the threat. 2 separate parties hoovering up disillusioned Tories from opposite ends of the political spectrum.
There are plenty of marginal constituencies in this part of the Midlands, so for the Tories, losing here means you're likely losing everywhere.
They just need to regroup, don't they, and get some street cred back. That's all. The Reform have got to prove themselves. They're very good at speaking, but we'll have to see what they can do.
I did vote for Boris once, which was Conservative, when he promised to cut down on immigrants, which he didn't. It's the only time I voted Conservative. It was for Boris.
So Reform this time?
Yes, Reform this time, yeah.
Feels like a lot of people are turning away from the main parties towards some of those smaller ones.
We're disenchanted with what's gone on, firstly with all the whole Conservative thing, and then what the Labour Party have done since they got in.
So as the Lib Dems swallow up swathes of Middle England and Reform continue their advance, what can the Tories do? Conservative MPs want action, but this Tory pollster says it will take time.
I think the first pressure for the Conservatives will be to come up with more clear policies. I was absolutely clear from day one that the Conservatives were going to lose a lot of seats because they were defending so many from 2021. And as I say, turning a supertanker around takes a long time.
Time may be on the Tories' side, but the party seems surrounded. The route out far from clear. Rob Powell, Sky News in Warwickshire.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview. Tonight, we're joined by the political and PR consultant, Leon Emirali, and the journalist and author, Christina Patterson. And amongst the stories we'll be discussing, this on the front of The Sun, which reacts to Prince Harry's bombshell interview. Its headline, Harry's lost it. We'll be discussing that and other stories when we come back. Do stay with us.